Now let's talk about getting what you want out of a therapy or spiritual healing or any type of therapeutic session. What you want and how to get whatever it is you want, whatever changes, improvements, gains, whatever you want to be free from, however to become more the way you want to be and not being a way that you don't want to be, that you find yourself being or experiencing. Well, the obvious true answer is it's going to be done by addressing those things within you and that come to mind that are relevant for you to achieve what you want, what's on your mind. Not what comes from some external program, somebody else's theories or thinking, some layered sequential approach of some sort of levels or techniques. That's really going on hoping that something like that is going to work. And what some systems do, it doesn't work well. And yes, again, I will bring up Scientology as a prime example, and there may be many others that where they go wrong, the fatality, the biggest error or mistake is the imposition of the system's relevance over what's relevant for you. Giving instructions, asking questions based on some generic one-size-fits-all program of progressive subjects. When you come for some specific improvement that you want, and you get sold or told this idea that, well, the way these things are accomplished is by, first we have to address this level and this layer and that level and that layer. This is all an imposing of some external systems or theories idea of what is relevant for everybody. It's generic and it doesn't relate specifically to you. So what's going to be effective is always going to be to take up what is coming up for you. A good example of this is, again, the Scientology, what's called the training routines for how their counselors, they're called auditors, and they're trained through what's called training routines, where they will ask their Scientology question from this level, from this process, from this program, which wasn't created with you in mind. It wasn't created based on your desires or your problems. No, it wasn't. So Scientology auditors, because I'm sure that very early on, it came up frequently that when somebody would go in a session with a Scientology auditor or Dianetics auditor, say in 1953 or 55 or 56, that the person receiving the session would be saying, but this is what I want to take up. I'm here for this. This is what I'm thinking about. And so there came a system for how to deal with that. And rather than to honor or respect your spiritual compass, what's naturally coming to mind for you, the flow of your consciousness and the stream of your interests, what would come to mind is irrelevant to the process or system that Scientology wants to impose. So they were trained in saying things like, well, I'm going to repeat the question, which is basically saying what's coming out of you isn't the answer I'm looking for to the question I'm asking from my system. And see, that's where it all goes wrong, right there. What's being done is the system's relevance that the auditor is trained in, the theories that the counselor is working off of, that relevance of, I need to get my program done on you, the person sitting there experiencing the session. I have to impose what works is for me to impose the relevance of what I've got in front of me over what's actually in and on your mind. It's imposing an external relevance over what is really relevant. The true relevance, the true definition of relevance has to be what's relevant for you, whatever comes into your mind. And when a question is asked, your response may seem completely irrelevant. It may seem like it doesn't answer the question, but if the question is remotely of interest or relevant, no matter how unrelated your answer seems to be, if you're just allowed to let the flow of your consciousness and your expression continue, the relevance will emerge. What works best is to have you express what's on your mind, what you're trying to solve, or what you're trying to get back to, or regain, or gain in yourself, or change. Bring that up, the feelings around that, and if that's allowed to be expressed and recognized and allowed to be fully processed and felt, that's where the change happens. It does not happen by imposing other subjects from a list, from a standardized list, from a generic system that wasn't written from your interests. Okay? So that is the ultimate problem with something like Scientology, is it's subsuming your trust in what's coming out of you and guiding or leading or imposing you to get on the program, get with the program of this external source. And that's why I've seen so many people go through that system over years and more money than you would believe they spent. And then they're sitting in front of me with what they hoped or expected they would have handled and resolved and changed or accomplished. Somewhere along that system that they kept getting told, you're going to get there, just continue, you're going to get there, just stay with our program. That's the basic problem, is imposing a false and external relevance that doesn't come from within you. It's not your relevance. You come for help or guidance. Aren't you entitled to have addressed what you are there to address? And there's a whole lot of indoctrination and imposition that you just got to stay with this. This is the right thing to do. And that's the basic failing. And that's why there's a lot of going on hoping. And there's a lot of, the more you're invested in this, the more you've put into this, the more you feel like you don't want to feel like you've made a terrible mistake and you've done the wrong thing. So you sort of create some of your own cognitive dissonance along with what is being imposed of I've just got to stick with this. I'm doing the right thing, until for many people, eventually that dam breaks and it's time to go. And it's all because your own true relevance, your feelings, desires, the ways of being that you don't like about yourself, that you don't feel you should have, and opposed to the ways of being that you have a passion to gain or regain, of being the way you want to be, and resolving the attitudes and feelings and uncomfortable emotional sensations that are troubling you. All that needs to happen is to allow these to express, fully express, and feel what needs to be felt instead of being misdirected by an imposed external idea of what's supposed to be relevant for you. In the Scientology session, when this comes up and the auditor instructs and leads you along a certain way, but what comes out of your mind doesn't seem to comply with what you're being told to respond with. And then it's imposed on you by this formulated system where the auditor says, well, I'm going to repeat the command, which is basically saying, your answer's wrong. Give me the answer I'm looking for. Well, that's really damaging. The biggest problem with this, and I'm not saying no good ever comes from that approach. I'm not saying that nothing good ever happens from that approach. I mean, a lot of thought went into that approach. But the greater liability, which overshadows whatever gains are likely to be made is that instead of empowering you, of getting you to recognize and trust your spiritual compass and have confidence in yourself and in what comes to your mind and in your drives and passions and motivations and in your instincts, you're being guided more and more to have your trust in yourself subsumed by a trust in somebody else's imposition of what you should be thinking about and what you need and what is relevant. That factor is deadly to one's finding their own voice, one's self-expression, one's recovering yourself and being comfortable in your own skin. You cannot be comfortable in your own skin by accepting the imposed idea or belief that somebody else can tell you what to address and what to think about when it doesn't come from within you. Imposed external ideas of what is relevant for you is the fatal flaw. Again, what is relevance, what is a true definition of relevance, is what is relevant for you, what feels relevant, what comes from within you is what needs to be allowed and accepted and invited and welcomed. These are the things that are going to bring out the you that you are meant to be, and not an imposition of how to be, what to think about, what to express. All of that ultimately reduces you and puts you behind some facade and some unacceptance of self. That's the problem with somebody imposing their external program or theories of what should be relevant for you, is it belittles you. It puts you underneath the authority of somebody else expressing what should be important to you, what you should be thinking about, what you should be talking about. That's the fatal flaw. What I do in what I call therapeutic spiritual counseling is welcome and invite that self-expression, the fears, the feelings, the attitudes that are already within you. Allow these to surface. And when they surface, emerge, they're recognized, change happens. And then you resolve and eliminate the ways of being that are not how you want to be, how you're meant to be, how you should be. And then that passion and drive within you to fully arrive at you and to become whole is realized to greater and greater degrees in everything we do. What's relevant for you is what's relevant for you. Don't ever allow that to be compromised or subsumed by somebody who wants to tell you what you should be thinking about, what questions to take up, what subjects to take up, and in any way imposes the idea that what comes out of you is not important or relevant. The more you can be guided to distrust you in favor of the external source, the more you are lost. I'm here to help you find you.